Greetings, children, and welcome to another episode of The Pie Crust. Again, we are at The Pie Crust and thepieCrust@gmail.com. Now, Mike's not here this week, but he leaves us with this. He leaves us with that these assholes in front of him at mini golf should let him play ahead of him. And that we need to do a shout out to Jessica Nigri, cosplayer extraordinaire. Yo, Jessica, you're hot. You should be on our show. But filling in for Mike this week is my Club Kayfabe compatriot, Chris O'Mealy.
What's going on, Pie Crust listeners? It's pretty exciting to be part of the different podcast this week, but it's going to be more than just wrestling talk. It's going to be nerd talk.
Yes,
I excel at this.
This is something for which you can excel.
Yes, it is definitely something at which I can excel. Thank you, Mike, for giving me the opportunity to take your place. I'm sure, in your opinion, I will not be as good as you, but maybe the listeners will think differently.
Maybe we'll be the Po Crust from now on.
The Po Crust. The Op Crust. Doesn't even make sense. Po Crust sounds disgusting.
The Operator Crust.
The
overpowered crust.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go ahead and agree with Mike, though. When you're playing mini golf and people are sucking in front of you, they really should just let you play through. Especially if there's only two of you playing and they have a family of 5 and their kids are running all over the place. Take 2 seconds to just sit down, relax, and let the faster players play through.
That goes for regular golf, too, people.
Yeah, it does, but I can't say I've ever played regular golf.
Me neither. I've been on a driving range a few times.
Yeah, so have I. I don't really think that counts.
You got to play through the non-existent people in front of you.
Well, it's like when I used to work at a ski resort, and they're like, oh, so you must ski every day. I'm like, no. I've done it before. Well, why don't you do it every day? Because I'm not good at it.
Because I like to stay inside where it's warm and do my job.
I don't enjoy falling on my ass.
At least you got cold compress right there.
Ooh. Just got burned.
You got burned by being cool. Okay. You had some things you want to talk about specifically, since you're a special guest.
Yes, indeed. I would like to take this opportunity to voice my concerns, hopes, and other info that I would like to discuss on the upcoming Star Wars trilogy, episodes 7 through 9. It's kind of cool to get to talk about this because as far as things in my life that I love, as far as fandoms are concerned, I would say Star Wars is probably my number one, and I mean that over everything. Pro wrestling, The Simpsons, everything. When it comes to fandom, it's always been Star Wars number one, and everybody else takes a back seat. So, sorry to all you witches and wizards waving your Harry Potter wands and your hobbits traveling to Middle-earth to bring back the One Ring. Sorry to all your Time Lords traveling in your TARDIS. All that stuff. Sorry. It all takes a back seat to the Jedi Order.
Yeah, but you like all those things, too. Well, you haven't seen any Doctor Who, but...
I will be soon. But that's not the point, though. The point is...
Number one in your heart.
Star Wars is number one. So, as a fan, a diehard fan, you can understand why I have some serious issues with the upcoming Star Wars movies. Now, first and foremost, I just want to throw it out there. I am extremely excited about these movies. And even if the best thing that happens in these 3 movies is still 10 times worse than the worst scene in Episode 1, I'm still going to see them. Possibly midnight premieres and everything. I'm not as crazy where I get to the point where I'm going to dress up, but who knows? It's Star Wars, and it's something I thought would never happen. I'm pretty sure that Lucas made it clear for a long time he wasn't going to continue Episodes 7 through 9, and the only reason we're getting these films now is because he sold to Disney, and Disney wants to do them.
Yep.
So, with that said, because he is selling to Disney, and even though Disney isn't always known for the highest quality, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, for example, Disney does put forth some efforts when it comes to really big projects. Yes, they've bombed with things like Prince of Persia and John Carter, I haven't actually seen John Carter, but
Neither have I.
yeah, it pretty much bombed, and I'm not really sure if that makes me want to see it or not. So I have high hopes, I have some concerns, and just coming from a fan point of view, there's a couple of things that I would like to see in episode 7 through 9, and a couple of things I definitely don't want to see. The first thing I want to see, and Dan, I want to know if you agree with me or not here, is I want to see an original story, not a rehash of one of these extended trilogy books. I know the books get a lot of praise from the critics, but I don't want to see that made into a movie unless they're actually going to do this book as a movie. For the actual 7 through 9, I want to see an original story.
I didn't really read the books, but I played some of the Jedi Knight games, and those are interesting.
These games are pretty badass. Yeah. The Kyle Katarn games?
Yep. Well, there's the one where you are one of the students. That one I liked more. Kyle Katarn one was difficult because in the first half of the game, it's when you had left the Jedi Order, so you're running around in first person with a gun, and not in third person with your lightsaber.
You got to get good at the blaster before you can upgrade to lightsaber.
I suppose. But I like Jedi Academy more. That one was more fun.
I never played Jedi Academy.
Oh, it's really cool. You're the only person ever to build your own lightsaber. So it's like a space bus full of upcoming Padawans, and you're the only one that has a lightsaber already, and everyone's like, how do you have a lightsaber already? And then you're playing, and then your ship crashes or whatever, and you have to save people, and then you get trained by Kyle Katarn. And you get to choose whether to turn heel or not at the right before the last level. And the difference in the last level between Jedi and Sith is, as the Jedi, you're fighting Sith, and as a Sith, you're fighting the Jedi and the Sith because you want to be the Sith. So you're fighting everybody in the end level instead of just half the people.
So basically, if you choose to go to the dark side, you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, you have to kill everybody.
That's awesome. I guess the whole reason why I'm sticking by this thing of wanting an original story is just because I really do want to see the conclusion of the Star Wars trilogy. Return of the Jedi ends with the Death Star getting blown up, the Emperor getting killed, and Darth Vader dies, and everybody's made fun of this. Family Guy, Robot Chicken, everybody's made fun of this. The Empire doesn't collapse. There's no way the entire Empire can collapse just because you killed their leader, because there totally aren't other people in government willing to step up and take the Emperor's place.
Well, that's why the books are called Shadows of the Empire.
Right. And that's what I think it needs to be. It needs to be one of those type of stories, but as far as where that story should go, Episode 9 should be the conclusion for peace in the galaxy. However they accomplish that should be how this concludes. You can do all your spin-off stories and do anything else in a timeline there, but if you're going to actually conclude the story, it should be the official downfall of whatever was left of the Empire for peace in the galaxy. If they eventually want to make more films after that, they can, by going off of that storyline. But it should be a conclusive storyline. At least that's how I think it should go.
Yeah, end of 9 needs to be the end.
Right. And I like that they want to do these side projects and have, Boba Fett gets his own movie and all that stuff.
Yeah, like a Scoundrels movie and a Bounty Hunters movie. It's going to be mostly Boba Fett.
And there's some cool stuff there, because there's a couple of unanswered questions that the prequels gave us. I remember as soon as I was done watching the prequels, one of the first things I said was, here's Chewbacca acting like this high-rank officer in an entire war, but then by the time the next movie rolls around, he's basically just an outcast chilling with Han Solo.
Yeah, what happened to him between the war and him becoming a scoundrel's first mate.
Right. How the hell did that happen? I really think they should explain that in one of these side movies. I like the fan theory behind that Chewbacca's actually working as a rebel spy the whole time, and that is a pretty plausible theory. Not as good as the James Bond is just a code name, not an actual guy. That one I think holds better merit, but it's still a good one. Like
why would he?
R2-D2,
I guess being stationed with a scoundrel is better than I thought it would be. Because
Yeah.
he's a scoundrel. He works with everybody. And
he
so
does what he wants. Han
he
Solo
can
works
get
for Han
inside
Solo.
Information. So.
Right. Han Solo's working for Han Solo. He may not have love for the Empire, but he'd probably still do something for them if he could. And maybe Chewie's the one who kind of kept him out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Kept him from falling to the wayside, you could say.
Except for he didn't do so well because he did get frozen in carbonite and get shot at.
Details.
Well, he did. Greedo did not shoot first.
No, Greedo did not shoot first. The other thing I always thought was funny was when people were like, there's a big fan theory that R2-D2 has to be a rebel spy. First of all, I don't think that's a fan theory. I'm pretty sure the movies confirm R2-D2 is a rebel spy, hence why he's taking the Death Star plans to Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm pretty sure the movies confirm that. So, good try, fans. You made a really good point. You're just rehashing something we've already seen. So, but nice try anyway.
I think he's trying to smuggle those plans to the rebels.
Yep. My other big problem with the prequels that I know will not be alleviated by 7, 8, and 9 is that they spent too much time on special effects and not enough time on story. In fact, one of the big things I liked about the prequels were the Nemoidians because they were actually costume characters. You didn't need every single character to be CGI. It was just unnecessary.
You mean the big Coliseum fight and everyone's freaking pixels?
Yeah.
For the Coliseum fight, Natalie Portman gets her shirt ripped off. I mean, not all the way, but...
That was about as much TNA as you were going to get out of Natalie Portman in those movies.
Well, these are PG, just like WWE, so...
Well, Carrie Fisher did her little slave bikini deal in Jabba's place. I always got a kick out of how in episode 4, Jabba the Hutt is just walking around like no big deal, but in episode 6, he's pretty much just stuck, sitting down, sweating to death, and he can't even move on his own account.
Yeah.
He must have the diabetes.
There's many problems with doing the earlier stories later, you know.
Yeah, I get the CGI thing, because they were doing it because they could. And I also know...
having Muppets?
Yeah. Well, I also know that episode 3 is really the prequel story that Lucas always envisioned, and 1 and 2 were basically 10% of that story stretched out into 2 movies, which is why I feel like episode 3 destroys the first 2 story-wise.
I had a friend in college that after episode 2 came out, he made a list on his computer of all the things that have to happen in episode 3 in order to get us to episode 4.
And how many of those happened?
I think all but 2.
That's not so bad. You don't happen to remember the 2 that didn't happen, do you?
Mace Windu didn't turn heel.
No, he did not.
And he got killed before he could. And I don't remember what the other one was.
There was another thing about the prequels that always bugged me. I always thought Darth Maul was a really weak character. They basically brought him in and was like, all right, we're going to make him look really badass. We're going to give him all kinds of martial arts moves. In fact, we'll do it even better. Let's hire an actual martial artist to play the role.
And we'll give him a double staff.
Lightsaber. And then they're like, he probably shouldn't talk, but let's give him some lines anyway. And it was as bad as making Boba Fett talk. Let him be the silent antagonist. He didn't need to speak at all. At last, we will have our revenge. Yeah, you're very intimidating. And then their follow-up to that was friggin' Count Dooku, played by Christopher Lee, who was the most charismatic... Who we will talk
about 2 more times in this episode.
Yeah, he's the most charismatic, regal performer there. He basically made Darth Maul look like the retard at the dinner table that nobody wants to talk to. Like the weird cousin.
All Darth Maul, Darth Maul didn't have to talk or do much of anything. All he had to do was have that big fight with Qui-Gon Jinn towards the end, and that would have been good.
Yeah, that's all he had to do. So I almost feel like they cheapened his character. Because when you follow it up with somebody as good as Count Dooku, it really makes the first act look like crap. And then, of course, Episode 3, everybody knows the real star of that was Ian McDiarmid.
He had to put on quite a performance.
Put on a great performance, too. There were like one or two times in the movie where I thought he got he had too much Emperor voice going on, kind of like in The Dark Knight when Christian Bale gets a little too into the Batman voice. So it's like, this is a very good movie, but can you stop trying to be that Batman? I didn't know it was possible to be two Batman until Christian Bale took over the role.
I don't get, there's people that are like, there's no one anywhere near him, why is he doing the voice? Because if you stop doing the voice, you're going to stop doing the voice at the wrong time.
That's true. I agree with it.
He's like, he's alone on top of a roof. Why is he talking to himself in the voice?
He just got a little too voicey. Voice-ish. I don't know, there's got to be a word for that somewhere. So, basically, I want to see the key actors return for Episode 7. I don't care if their roles are diminished. I know it's going to be a big thing with fans. But you need to have Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher. They have to be there. Anthony Daniels has to be C-3PO. I suppose R2-D2 doesn't matter. I guess Kenny Baker doesn't have to return for that. Billy D. Williams has to come back. And that's pretty much it. You get those roles back. You get your key characters back. And even if you diminish their roles just enough to put the focus on some new characters, like I've heard the big rumors they want to do it, a story involving Luke's children, or Han or Leia's children, then do it. Get the focus on them, but you got to make sure your key actors are there, because I think a lot of fans would pretty much rebel if they recast Luke Skywalker or Han Solo.
Yeah, they're going to have a deal to either make them look younger or having to write it as in it's happened now, 30 years later.
Well, I think Lucas's original intent was for the movies to happen 30 to 40 years later, so that shouldn't be a problem. Although, if I learned anything from Tron Legacy, it's that you can make somebody look 30 years younger.
Yeah, well...
Do you like Jeff Bridges? Well, here he is twice.
I do like Jeff Bridges. I'll watch almost anything he's in.
Right. I love Jeff Bridges. So there you go. So... my Star Wars expectations are not going to be as high as they were for the prequels, and I do blame the prequels for putting those expectations down. But I think it's going to be really cool to see these movies. I know there's still a lot of people who have issues with this, or worried about it, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Let's wait and see what's going to happen. Let's wait until the trailers start coming, till we start getting a confirmation of the story before we really start jumping to conclusions, because there's still too many factors out there right now.
Well, J.J. Abrams is in charge of the new
exactly. Yes,
series.
and that's. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I almost forgot to make that point. Yeah, J.J. Abrams is going to be in charge, and he did a phenomenal job with these new Star Trek movies.
Yep, love him.
In fact, he based the first Star Trek movie on Star Wars. He confirms that too in interviews. That was his whole inspiration. So you have Disney backing it, so the budget can be anything you want. They can get anything they need to happen for these movies. And you have J.J. Abrams directing. There are a lot of factors that are working in favor of these films being good. So to all the fans out there, I say, let's give it a chance. It's not coming out for a few more years. It's summer 2015 is tentative. Let's let 2014 happen and see what kind of news comes out.
See what happens at the Comic-Con next year.
Right. Oh, that's going to be awesome. I might actually try to make a trip to Comic-Con just to see information if it's going to be there.
That'd be crazy. I always want to go to Comic-Con, but the biggest and best ones are in San Diego and New York City, and one is a 12-hour drive, and the other is a 3-day drive. So.
Yup. Well, who knows? Maybe one year a trip to San Diego should just be in the works. I've been to San Diego before. It's a really nice city, so any excuse to go back would be worth it.
I've only been in San Francisco Airport, so it doesn't really count.
Yeah, that doesn't really count.
I guess technically, actually no, because international airports are considered no man's land, kind of quote unquote. It's like an international area or whatever.
Yeah,
It doesn't belong to any specific country.
Where were you going when you went to San Francisco?
I was flying back to New York from Oregon, so I stopped in San Francisco before going to DC Dulles and then Syracuse, New York.
DC Dulles. It's an airport I've never flown out of, but I'm not interested in flying out of it ever.
It is humongous, and it's just like a bunch of strips, so you have to like get into this like super tractor thingy so it can drive you to the other strip of gates.
The Orlando airport's like that. There's a little tram that you can take to get to your gates. That's not that bad.
It's interesting.
Yeah. We've had some pretty good talk here about Star Wars movies. As far as films go, what's cool about fandom and films is there's always going to be debate over what's better. There's always going to be a Star Wars versus Star Trek debate.
I like them both.
I hear a lot of Harry Potter versus Lord of the Rings debates, and that's actually something interesting. Yeah, I do too. Now, that's actually something I wanted to bring up, and I want to ask your opinion on this, Dan. As far as the Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings films go, because they're two film series based on, best-selling books, some of the best fiction out there. They really do appeal to the same genre, but two different genres at the same time. But when it came to casting of these film series, I think they were spot on. What do you think when it comes to casting in Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
They did such a good job. I remember seeing once that someone was really upset that Rufus Scrimgeour was played by Bill Nighy because he doesn't look anything like he's described in the book, and I'm just like, one, they had to get Bill Nighy in one of those movies. Two,
yeah,
he did a great job. So three, shut up. Just because he doesn't look like a guy that showed up in the last two books doesn't mean jack.
Well, they got Jim Broadbent to play Slughorn in the sixth movie, and he doesn't look anything like Slughorn is described in the books. In fact, the little animated pictures over the chapter titles show Slughorn looking like a cross between the Monopoly guy and that walrus character from Alice in Wonderland. So, you can make that argument too, but Jim Broadbent was phenomenal as Slughorn.
He did a great job. They needed to get Jim Broadbent in one of the movies.
Yup.
He did a great job, so shut up.
I've also heard people complaining like, they actually got Doctor Who in there, but he had such a bit part.
He was the most important part in... I know, even though he's in 5 minutes of the movie, he's the most important character in the whole movie, in the whole story.
Yep. I mean, you're never going to make everybody happy. I've also heard a lot of people with the whole complaining argument over the recasting of Dumbledore. They're like, Richard Harris was so much better because he was so much closer to the Dumbledore.
Yeah, well, Richard Harris was so much deader.
Yeah, so they didn't really have a choice, but it was funny because Michael Gambon, I believe, is a drunk in real life, so...
He actually did well as the Dumbledore we got to know in the last couple stories. So,
yeah, I agree.
Because Dumbledore was more strict and more out of the way in those first few stories. So I think it made sense.
Yeah, the evolution of Dumbledore worked in the end. I always found it funny, though, that Michael Gambon, a straight actor, played a gay wizard, whereas in The Lord of the Rings, a gay actor plays... I guess he would be a straight wizard. They don't really touch on that too much.
Be a straight wizard, Annie. Kickster's right. I'm going to finish this race.
Oh, Kickster. We had to meet Anakin's childhood friends in that movie. The casting job in Lord of the Rings is phenomenal, and I dare say it might actually be better than the casting job in Harry Potter. Simply because of the fact that some of the kids had to actually grow into their roles, and you weren't going to be 100% positive they were going to be the right choices. They were. I also think that Lord of the Rings worked as far as casting went because they shot all the movies at the same time, so it all looks like it took place at the same time, which works for those stories. Harry Potter, obviously, each one takes place in a different year, so the kids
Yeah, and when
had
they
to
started
grow.
the movies, there was only 4 books out.
Right. Lord of the Rings, you already had your conclusive story. And once again, this was pointed out by the Nostalgia Critic, but I'm pretty sure that Sean Bean has a clause in his contract that says he must die in every film he is in.
And TV shows. Hold on.
Yep. It's like, who's going to play Boromir? Hey, who's that guy that has to die in every movie? Sean Bean? Cast him.
They died in GoldenEye. Oh, yeah.
Yes, he did. He sure did.
He even dies in video games because in Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, he, first of all, Jean-Luc Picard is the king at the beginning of that game. Patrick Stewart is the king in the beginning. He dies in the beginning. You have to find the new king. It's played by Sean Bean. At the end of the story, he has to die to close the Oblivion gates.
It must be a contract clause. It has to be.
He dies really, really well. It would be a shame to waste that ability on this movie.
It really does. And what the best part is, of all the death scenes in Lord of the Rings, Boromir probably has the best one.
Which is funny because he has like one of the least descriptive deaths in the book. It just says he was pierced with many arrows.
Yeah, well, he sure was.
That's Tolkien for you, man. Like, I remember reading some stuff and he would tell like this epic story that took place over one day. And it would be like 3 chapters of the book, and then he would tell an epic death, like the most important death in all of Lord of the Rings, probably. He tells it in like a sentence.
That's how Tolkien writes. What's funny about Boromir's death, though, is he dies as such a hero, almost like a tragic hero because he's so upset and guilty. It's
10 seconds before.
Gruesome. Because he's not only impaled with arrows, but he's dying right in front of Merry and Pippin. But then, by the time we get to the third story, we meet his father, and Denethor has what was probably the most unintentionally funny death in a film series since Porkins died in Star Wars Episode 4. Because it's supposed to be all tragic about how his other son died that he didn't even care about in the first place. So he douses himself in fluid, lights himself on fire, finds out his son is alive, and instead of, trying to put out the fire or anything, he runs, covered in flames, all the way down that extremely long, what was it, like that courtyard that he had. And they show how big that courtyard was. Somehow he made it all the way to the end while he was still on fire, just to jump off the edge.
Meanwhile, there's like the greatest battle in Middle Earth history
There's a whole
happening.
battle going on outside. He's just like, all right, gotta go.
GTG.
GTG, peace. I don't think it was meant to be funny.
There dies Denethor, son of... I don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. While he's running out in flames, Gandalf is just monologuing about how, yep, there goes Denethor. He's dead now, and yet he's still actually alive at the moment. I think that was just Gandalf being pissed off because they let him die in the first movie.
Yeah, but he came back.
But that's what's funny about that, because in the original story, it's the Balrog's whip that takes him down. But in these movies, he just kind of drops. Frodo tries to save him, and then they all hold him back. Like, no, don't save him, he's gone already.
He told him
He's
to
just
run,
staring at
you fools!
I think that's why he just let go and gave up, because he's just like, all right, fuck these guys, I'm done.
People are terrible. First they're like, we'll go over the pass, now we'll go under the pass. Idiots throwing rocks into the water. Freaking so done.
I'm done with this. And yet, then we find out that Gandalf can teleport, because he falls down this incredibly long cavern, fighting the Balrog, and then magically appears on top of a mountain.
Don't question it. He was fighting the Balrog of Morgoth.
This is the same guy who can talk to butterflies and make giant eagles appear.
He's also Magneto.
Yes, he is also Magneto.
And he's also gay.
He is
As the day is long.
Oh, dear.
Speaking of gay
Some people
things,
still define it. Gross. Ugh. Yeah, I got another one I wanted to bring up. We just brought up Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, but here's another popular one I've seen some fans debating before, and I want your take on this, Dan. Pixar or DreamWorks?
it is very interesting.
It's a tough one to choose. Now, Pixar Animated Films has so far released 14 films starting in 1995 with the original Toy Story, working up to Monsters University that came out this year. If you look at a list of the DreamWorks animated films, they started with Ants in 1998 and are currently up to their 27th animated film with Turbo coming out, which just came out on July 17th of this year. So, as far as quality versus quantity goes, that's really where this comes in. You look at the list of Pixar films. Even the worst of the Pixar films, which in my opinion is probably Cars 2. It's pretty much everybody's opinion there. And I didn't hate Cars 2 either. I thought it was actually a pretty fun action movie. But even Cars 2 is better than half of the DreamWorks films, at least from the ones that I've seen. On the opposite end of that, the best of the DreamWorks films are so entertaining that they're almost better than the Pixar movies as a whole. So I think what it really does is you need to break it down. So you take your Pixar movies. You start with the original Toy Story, and that was a masterpiece. 1995 computer animated movie, first of its kind, full length, absolutely beautiful story. I don't think any kid from that generation, from our generation, didn't like that movie.
I even saw it like 3 or 4 times in the theater.
Yeah. What's funny, go back and watch the original Toy Story now and watch the scenes where, Andy's talking to his mother, and look at how, jerky the animation from the humans are. It's kind of interesting to see how dated it can look now, and yet still looks so much better than other stuff that came out in 1995. It's a very interesting one to watch. The next one was A Bug's Life, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I do like the story. I think Bug's Life tells an interesting story because it tells the story of Bug's life. But I think what kind of kills me in it is a lot of the circus characters are very annoying to me. I think that's why I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Of course, the next one they went with was Toy Story 2 in 1999. This would be one of those cases where I truly believe the sequel was better than the original. Agree, disagree?
Yeah. I think it was... If I was going to give number system, I would say Toy Story 1's like a 99, and Toy Story 2 is like a 95.
Alright, that's fair. That's fair. And I think Toy Story 2 took what was already a really good story and made it bigger in a couple of really clever ways. Because all the Toy Stories touch on, kids and their toys. Here's what happens when the toy gets replaced. Here's what happens when toys go to the yard sale. And then the third one touches on here's what happens when the kid grows up. So they actually all have their own definitive stories to it. As a sequel, though, it's definitely worthy. Now, Pixar was on a roll for a couple of years because in 2001 they gave us Monsters, Inc., in 2003 they gave us Finding Nemo, and in 2004 they gave us The Incredibles. And those are all amazing movies, definitely some of Pixar's best. Monsters, Inc. is a great story, even if it is just real monsters, with a twist. Finding Nemo is a great story. I think that was the definitive Pixar animation. I don't see this one in theaters because it came out when I was a senior in high school. And that, wasn't the thing to do if you're an 18-year-old boy in high school to go see Finding Nemo in the theaters, which I kind of regret. The movie's amazing.
I didn't see it until one summer at summer camp, summer of 2004. They showed it on a big projector screen at the camp. Yeah. And what was funny is one of my ears was completely blocked, so I could only hear out of one ear when I saw the movie.
And then The Incredibles, which came out in 2004, which is my second favorite Pixar movie of all time, because it deals with superheroes, which everybody loves, but it deals with one of the most clever supervillains of all time, which is the rejected fanboy who becomes a supervillain through nothing but technology just to take out the superheroes that rejected him. And I think it's a really good, albeit dark story for Pixar. Oh, and the villain is voiced by Jason Lee, which was brilliant casting.
Yep.
Cars
Where is my super suit?
Yes, that's my favorite scene in that movie. It's Sam Jackson, because why not? Cars comes out in 2006, and Cars is a really good movie for what it is. It's not one of their best, but it's a clever take on the world of cars, and being that for years, in fact, yeah, from about the early 1990s until 2001 when Dale Earnhardt died, I was a diehard NASCAR fan. My parents still are, but I haven't really watched a race since that happened. So what was kind of cool about Cars was I actually understood most of the jokes in there. Like, I got the Richard Petty jokes and the Dale Earnhardt Jr. jokes and Darryl Waltrip in the booth. It was kind of sad at the same time. Like, any of the famous drivers that did cameos, like Mario Andretti, or in the sequel they had Jeff Gordon. Like, I understand all those jokes, and I think it's kind of funny. Ratatouille was 2007, and you have not seen this one, have you, Dan?
Saw hunks of it, but not in its entirety.
Good story. It's an unfortunately forgettable Pixar film because it didn't really spawn a franchise. Like, I actually work for Disney, so I know what kind of merchandise they're pandering off in every single store, and it's all Toy Story. It's all monsters. It's Nemo toys everywhere. There's Lightning McQueen toys everywhere. And of all of their movies, the thing you see the least of next to Bug's Life is probably Ratatouille. It's definitely worth seeing, though.
Poor Patton Oswalt. He isn't getting that extra money from merchandise.
He's not getting the love, is he? WALL-E came out in 2008, and this was the first Pixar movie I saw in theaters since Monsters, Inc. in 2001, and I do not regret it because it was phenomenal. WALL-E is my favorite Pixar movie of all time right now, until somebody comes along to best it. It was my favorite story for a couple of reasons. It was brilliantly written, because they created a great story with about 6 to 8 main voice roles. That's all they used. And for the first 20 minutes or so of the film, there is no dialogue. So it's also brilliant filmmaking. Plus, it's a real treat to see what happens when humans become too reliant on technology and they all become fat. Fat! Scotty Steiner would not approve of this utopian society.
I don't got no donuts. I don't got no cheeseburgers.
2009 was Up. The first 15 minutes of this movie are the single best thing ever done by Pixar. The best love story ever told. When they say it is a better love story than Twilight, they are not making that up.
It's a better love story than just about everything.
It's a better love story than just about anything.
Is there any dialogue or anything in that?
No, it's a musical montage. It is a musical montage.
I haven't seen it, but I know all about it.
Yes. It is brilliant. The rest of the movie is okay. It's got some funny parts. It's got some touching parts and everything. But for the most part, that is really where it is good. It was the beginning. I'm not saying that the movie is bad, but it's the beginning that... The beginning is the best. The rest of it is good to great, depending on who you're talking to, what your point of view is. Toy Story 3 came out in 2010 as the third installment to Toy Story, coming out 11 years after the previous one. There was a lot of big expectations. I'm very, very happy that they met those expectations and in a lot of cases exceeded them. I don't know if I would say I like Toy Story 3 better than 2, but it's definitely worthy. They're all worthy. And it, again, had the brilliant voice cast and another great take on story. What happens when the kid gets old and the toys don't want to be forgotten? Well, here's the story. Now, of course, you follow one sequel up with a poor one, and that would be Cars 2 in 2011, unquestionably Pixar's worst movie. I enjoyed it, and I will defend this movie, because the biggest complaint I heard about it was, it wasn't a racing movie. There wasn't enough racing in it. Well, it wasn't supposed to be a racing movie. The whole point of the movie is Mater, Larry the Cable Guy, working as a spy. That was the story. The racing was the side story. It's very James Bond-ish, and I enjoyed it. It was an action movie. It's not the funniest, it's not the best written, it's probably the worst written, but it's still good in its own right, and it deserves a second chance. And if we ever do a list of like sequels that are not as bad as everybody say they are, Cars 2 would be one of them that I would defend. The follow-up to that was Brave in 2012, which was good, except I really do think that you have to be female to appreciate it more. It's a very mother-daughter story. It's a good story, but you will appreciate it more as a female. And that concludes with Monsters University, which came out this year. I saw that in the theaters, and it was Pixar's first attempt at a prequel, and it did not disappoint. It was a very good story, worthy, can't say successor, I guess, because it's not a sequel, worthy addition to the Monsters, Inc. franchise. And like Toy Story 2, I can't say it was better or worse. I think it was right on par with it. So that's my take on Pixar, and the reason I spent so much time talking about them is because, like I said, overall I do think Pixar is better. I think they are the better storytellers. I think their animation style is better because they don't use that jerky motion in any of their animation. They individually move each pixel frame by frame. That's why their animation always looks so smooth. Their least entertaining movies are still better than half the stuff DreamWorks has put out, but the stuff that DreamWorks put out that excelled...
But Shrek, man.
Shrek, exactly. Now I haven't seen all the DreamWorks movies, so I'm just going to run down a couple of them that I have seen, and for better or for worse. The first one out was Ants. I think Ants is better than Bug's Life. I think that the story is more adult, and maybe that's what I liked about it. Because it came out when I was in 8th grade, so it was one of those things where here's the movie that's based more for kids, and here's the movie that's based more adults because it has actual action, swearing, death, a couple of gruesome moments, even though, in the end, it really is just a Woody Allen movie. But it's pretty good, and considering that the two military villains are Gene Hackman and Christopher Walken, that was pretty awesome. But yes, if Woody Allen was an ant, this would be his movie. Now, I haven't seen a lot of these movies, like Prince of Egypt or Road to El Dorado, so I can't judge them, but I know they didn't exactly get the best ratings. Chicken Run I have seen. I haven't seen it in a long time. I remember enjoying it, but I'd have to rewatch it to really give you a synopsis of whether or not it was a good story. That takes us to the first Shrek, which came out May 18th, 2001.
Jeez,
and Shrek,
that long ago?
Yeah. I know, amazing to think about. Shrek is definitely the, what would you want to say, the franchise leader for DreamWorks. Kind of like how...
The face
if you were gonna,
of DreamWorks.
Yeah, the face of DreamWorks. If you were going to put a face on Pixar, it would probably be Woody and Buzz Lightyear, because Toy Story really is their big story. But I would say that Shrek and Donkey would be the face of DreamWorks. Now, the first Shrek I loved. The second Shrek I thought was even better than the first one, and that's a sequel that I know I liked better than the first one. The third and fourth one, they really should have stopped at the third one. The fourth one isn't bad, but it's very forgettable.
I haven't seen the fourth one, but the third one I was like, oh, so they just turned Shrek into a sitcom, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, my wife's pregnant. I don't know if I'll be a good dad.
Shrek the Third is an episode of Seinfeld.
I don't know if I'll be a good dad. What's the deal with princes? I don't want to be the king. Where are you, Justin Timberlake?
So sad. Shark Tale was DreamWorks. I've seen, I believe, about 3/4 of this film.
I saw all
and
of it.
It's one of those movies. This came out in 2004, which was the same year as iRobot. So it was the year of Will Smith advertising.
It has like a 32 on Rotten Tomatoes. I didn't mind it. I would give it at least a 50.
I don't remember hating it, but I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't like finish watching it and be like, well, I wish I had that hour and a half back.
Right. The Over the Hedge movies are DreamWorks. I have seen part of one of them. I don't remember if I thought it was any good or not. I think it was just one of those movies where it's like, oh, it's a computer animated movie based on a newspaper comic strip. So it is what it is. I have never seen a Madagascar movie before.
Either have I, and there's like 5 of them.
Yeah, they destroy at the box office, though, so they have to at least be worth something. I'd be willing to look at them, but they They don't really score that well in any way, shape, or form. Never seen B-Movie, although I've heard it's pretty much just Jerry Seinfeld as a bee.
What's the deal with making honey?
What's the deal with pollen?
Why are we always making honey, and what is the deal with the queen?
However, two movies that I did see from DreamWorks that I enjoyed for what they were Monsters vs. Aliens and Megamind, which came out 2009, 2010, respectively. Monsters vs. Aliens is good because it really is just kind of a silly story, but it's very entertaining for what it is. And Seth Rogen plays the Blob, and it's one of those roles, kind of like the movie Paul, where you don't really see the alien. You really do understand that it's Seth Rogen, but he really transforms himself into this role. I think without him, the movie wouldn't have been as good. Megamind I enjoyed because Will Ferrell is very hit and miss for me. I generally do like Will Ferrell, although there's some things he does that drive me insane. But I like the idea of what happens when the supervillain actually wins. What does he do with his life? I thought that was kind of an intriguing story. Not the best DreamWorks movie, but it's definitely worth a look. Moving up the ladder, DreamWorks, as far as quality goes, Kung Fu Panda I really, really liked. I love the voice actors. I like the story.
Skadoosh.
I'm not the biggest Jack Black fan, unless he's doing Tenacious D, of course, which is awesome. But I loved this movie. The sequel was pretty good, too. Not as good or memorable as the first one, but definitely worth a look. And the best part was when they asked Dustin Hoffman to be in the movie, he said he would not play a role unless he was allowed to be an endangered species. So they made him the red panda. So I always got a kick out of that. But as far as DreamWorks goes, their best movie of all time, which scored 98 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think that's their highest-ranked film ever as far as animation goes, was How to Train Your Dragon. Again, perfect voice cast, beautiful animation, really good story.
T.J. Miller's in that!
T.J. Miller is in that. With
Yeah!
Got the obnoxious twins in the movie. And McLovin's in it, too.
Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Yes, and Jonah Hill.
Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Jonah Hill, Ugly Betty is in it. And Jay Baruchel is the main actor. Windows.
Really?
Yes, he is Hiccup. It's funny because he's got that dry sarcasm that he has that made him so damn funny in movies like This Is the End, where he's trying to convince this dragon. He's trying to convince the girl that the dragon's good. So the dragon, just being a douchebag and like taking her for a ride and flying as out of control as possible, he's just like, oh, and now he's spinning. This is perfect. I just love that dry wit.
I haven't seen it, but I heard a lot about it.
And that wraps up a lot of DreamWorks movies. I've not seen Rise of the Guardians or The Croods, although The Croods is actually killing in the box office this year. In fact, I think it's doing better than Monsters U.
They already have like a Christmas movie set up.
Yeah, and possibly Despicable Me 2 as well. And I haven't seen the individual Puss in Boots movie, but I'm leery about seeing that just because of how much Shrek Forever After was very meh. And, of course, the new film, Turbo, as Dan described earlier, is just what you want to see because what's it about, Dan?
It's about a snail that's fast, and it's so fast that it gets to compete against Indy cars at the Indy 500. You know, I'm a wrestling fan, and I'm a Doctor Who fan. I can suspend disbelief far and wide.
It's a snail competing in the Indy 500. The other funny thing about Pixar and DreamWorks is that Pixar has pretty much gotten itself to their, we're probably just going to do one movie a year. They're only now starting to look at 2 films a year. 2015, they've got Inside Out and Finding Dory as their tentative films. And then in 2017, they've got 2 movies planned as well, which leads a lot of people to believe, because it's a summer and a November release, that's going to be another sequel or prequel to something they've already done, which is very possible. They've had Toy Story 4 rumored for a long time now. So that's possible, too. But I think it's DreamWorks that kind of kills me with their sequels because they've got How to Train Your Dragon 2 planned for 2014, and they've already got How to Train Your Dragon 3 planned for 2016. They haven't even released the second one yet. The Penguins of Madagascar are getting their own movie because Puss in Boots got his own movie, and the Despicable Me Minions are getting their own movies, so we've got to give this side character a movie. And they're also making a Trolls movie. You know, not Troll 2, the worst movie of all time, but Trolls, the toy.
Like the little toy with the jewel belly button?
Yeah, and the hair. Yup.
Awesome.
That's it. A Trolls movie.
They made a video game
yeah.
on NES.
Yep.
I watched the Continue guys play it.
They are also making a Mr. Peabody and Sherman movie, which I actually am intrigued by, because when I used to watch Rocky and Bullwinkle as a kid, that was my favorite part of the show.
Oh, yeah. Now watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
So yeah, when it comes to Pixar versus DreamWorks, I really think you're going to find your better films with Pixar.
Pixar wins, but DreamWorks isn't that far behind.
No, but when DreamWorks hits a home run, they really hit a good home run. I also think that DreamWorks should follow Pixar's rule in that they will only make a sequel if they're convinced it can live up to the first movie. Cars 2 notwithstanding, I suppose.
Suppose.
Yes. Suppose. Dan, I know you got some interesting tidbits you want to talk about, specifically because you got the GameFly now.
Yes, I got my debit card, so I signed up for the GameFly. And currently in transit to me are BioShock Infinite and the new Tomb Raider game. So I got to finally play those, so next week you'll hear about those. I also grabbed the Borderlands 2 DLC. I only played an hour or so of Pirates Booty, so more on that next week as well.
You've played more Borderlands 2 than I have. I still haven't even finished the first game.
And I still have it, so if you want to mess around in the old Borderlands game or whatever. And the Games with Gold game that's coming out Thursday still has not been announced. Major Nelson says he's going to announce it on Wednesday.
It's so disappointing. I'm really excited about that. I have to start playing my Assassin's Creed 2 game. So, before you close out the show, I have to tell a Hey Man story. This was by request of some of our listeners. They want to hear about the one and only time I ever hung out with Hey Man by myself. Oh. Now, Hey Man is a friend of a friend, or a acquaintance, not really sure why I'm a friend of a friend kind of deal. We hung out one time, and I don't even remember what the context of why we were hanging out was, but we were playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi game, whatever the fuck you pronounce that. I'm a Dragon Ball Z fan, I don't even know how to pronounce that. We were playing on the PlayStation 2, and he set all kinds of precedents and rules for this. The first thing he said was, okay, you can pick any character you want, but you can't be Kid Buu. Like, why? Because he's too strong. His moves are fascist. Okay. So he's strong, therefore he's fascist? I never understood that. Do you not know what fascism is? He's fascist, so you can't play as him. Oh, okay. So who can I play as? Well, I recommend this guy and this guy. Oh, okay. Oh, you picked those guys because you knew who was strong against them, and therefore you could beat me in the first game, considering I've never even played before, and I was probably going to lose anyway. That's fair. So there was that. Then we were fighting the Ginyu Squad, and he's like, okay, now when you fight the Ginyu Force, you have to play them in the order that they fought in the cartoon. Why? Because it makes for a better game. It does? Okay. So, yeah, there were rules for how to do this. Then we had to play GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. This is the only time in my life I've ever had a bad time playing GoldenEye. In fact, there should be a meme that says if you ever play a game with A-Man, you're going to have a bad time.
You're going to have a bad time.
I wasn't allowed to play as Oddjob because he's fascist, because he's small.
He's short, so that's fascist.
So that's fascist.
It's like, I want to play as Oddjob because he was a pro wrestler.
I don't want to play as Oddjob because I like the character. It's one of my favorite Bond characters. But no, this is how we have to play. I forgot what other game you made me play that I hadn't touched in forever and I couldn't. I think it was Perfect Dark. I actually like Perfect Dark. Again, find a way to make me hate a game that I used to love. Ugh. That was a good time. So yeah, don't play video games with Heyman. Not that that'll ever happen again, because, he's got his log cabin in the backwoods of New Jersey, and I live in Orlando, Florida. So I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon.
Last time I played a game with him online, he actually helped me get a couple achievements, so...
He'll do stuff like that, but then, when we were playing the Royal Rumble in WWE 12 or 13, whichever one had the Rumble achievements. It must have been 12. Yeah, it must have been 12.
Because it was brand new online that you could do the Rumbles.
Right. And he is like, all right, we're going to play 2 of them. You can win one, I'll win the other, and we'll both get the achievement. And then we get to the end, I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be your victory. So he goes, well, we got to make it good. So he's just, beating up my character. We got to make it good. It's got to be epic. It's got to be a big finish. And I got so bored. I'm just like, he's like, come on, fight back. It's got to be good. I'm like, you know what, fuck this. So I tried to eliminate him, and he got really pissed off because I was going to fuck him over. Then he's like, fine, here. I'm like, we're doing this to get the achievements. If you want to play competitively, we can do that, but we're achievement hunting right now. Get your damn achievement, let's move on.
He's the worst, because we would get a group of 4 together and just try to do spots and stuff, but he'd be trying to sneak pins all the time.
Yeah, it was really annoying.
It's we're here to find out if I can put this table here, and I situate you here, and I hit this move, will you go through the table?
And then when he would win, it would be like, oh, you guys are terrible at this. I'm so good.
Well, most of the time, I'd end up winning those matches, because we would get to the point where we don't have any more spots to do, and then I would edge my way a victory.
Nice.
And he'd get mad.
Oh, well. That's what you get.
No one else cared, because they knew at least he wasn't the one that won.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, if I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose to anybody else.
Right.
Well, that was fun. Thank you for having me on this week. I'd like to appear on future episodes, maybe actually have Mike on next time so we can have a 3-man debate. We can be a 3-man band in here. Up in this thing.
3-man band! Well, yes, thanks. I had a good time with you filling in, with your ideas and bringing stuff to the plate.
My expert opinions that really aren't that expert, because I'm not an expert, but I'm just speaking as a fan.
You're expertly with your thoughts and opinions.
Yes.
My expert opinion is that I am an expert at opinions.
Yes, that is my expert opinion.
So I guess that's it for this week. Mike should be back next week. So if you hated Chris being on, calm down.
But if you love Chris being on, let Mike know.
Let Mike know that you hate him and you like the other guys. All right. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you guys again. Bye.